Before we begin, viewer discretion is highly advised. The following is for informational and entertainment purposes only. This is the actual federal courtroom testimony of the Sean Diddy Combs trial, as reported by Inner City Press. In the ECE trial of Sean Diddy Combs, no one expected the next witness to be wearing a dark blue suit with a badge tucked under his lapel. But when former FBI agent Mark Halperin walked up to the stand, the room went completely silent. What he revealed was more than just scandalous. It was a system, a network of protection so deep it reached the highest levels of the United States. Yes, he named Barack Obama, the man many viewed as a symbol of hope, now allegedly tied to parties, pardons and protection involving Diddy. According to Halperin, the real reason Diddy stayed protected for decades had nothing to do with skilled lawyers and everything to do with being valuable to the powerful. What followed was a testimony that connected religion, politics, the music industry, and a secret network of control that had been forming since the 1990s. The courtroom was packed, but no one dared breathe. Not when the back doors swung open, and a man in a dark blazer with a briefcase stepped inside. No name was given. No credentials were announced. The judge simply nodded. That was the sign. This wasn't just any witness. This was someone who had operated from the shadows. Someone with access beyond what any reporter or private investigator could ever imagine. He was referred to only as Special Agent Redacted, a senior federal agent who had worked for decades inside the FBI's political corruption and organized crime units. And today, for the first time, he was speaking under oath about one man, Sean Diddy Combs. The agent took a seat, opened his briefcase and placed a black folder on the stand. He didn't glance at Diddy, who sat frozen at the defense table, his fingers locked tightly. He didn't look at the jury either. He just said, "I've been watching Mr. Combs and his operation for over 20 years. This isn't new. What's new is that we're finally allowed to say it." The judge motioned for him to continue. The agent testified that the FBI had opened early inquiries into Shah Combs as far back as the late 1990s. The red flags were always present. He said, "We had money transfers that didn't add up, private events overlapping with known trafficking, networks, international ties to criminal shell firms, and yet every time we closed in, the doors slammed shut." The agent recounted a specific moment in 2001. An international money laundering sting tied to a Bad Boy Europe affiliate. Evidence pointed directly to Diddy's financial staff, offshore accounts, fake invoices, and shell firms in Luxembourg, and biz. But when it came time to get warrants, the request was denied. That's when the agent said he realized we weren't just dealing with celebrity shielding, we were dealing with federal obstruction. Murmurs filled the courtroom. "I don't mean to sound paranoid," the agent added, "but this wasn't some local cops backing off. This was higher-up Washington types telling us to drop it." Files vanished. Witnesses were moved. Investigators were reassigned. At first it looked like coincidence, but it wasn't. The prosecution then presented a timeline of stalled probes dating from 1999 to 2013. Every time, Diddy was connected to something criminal, from trafficking to fraud to assault. Either a main witness disappeared or a federal pause shut the case down. One juror looked genuinely stunned. A woman in the gallery gasped, hand covering her lips. Then came the bombshell. In 2003, the agent said, "We had reason to think Mr. Combs was under unofficial informant protection, the kind not listed in public records. That kind of coverage only comes from the top. And back then, there were only 3 people in government who could have signed off." The room froze, and Diddy looked like he knew exactly who those people were. Special Agent Redacted leaned forward, cleared his throat. "This is where it turns," he said. "Because this isn't just about crimes committed, it's about who let them happen. And that brings us to Mr. Combs' ties with top political names, specifically Barack Obama." The room dropped into silence. Even the judge raised his head slowly, eyes narrowing. The agent opened the black folder again and showed the jury a set of photographs. The first was a grainy 2005 image, Diddy standing with then-Senator Obama at a fundraiser in Chicago. The Next, from 2007, an off-the-record event in D.C., hosted by a powerful lobbying group connected to the DNC. Diddy's name wasn't listed, but the photo clearly showed him there, and he wasn't alone. These weren't just photo ops, the agent said. These were meetings, behind-closed-doors sessions. We believe Mr. Combs was involved in info trades with campaign figures, leaking data on others in return for cover. The defense jumped up shouting, "Objection!" before the agent could finish. But the prosecution calmly handed over exhibits, travel logs, email data, even a redacted internal memo that mentioned a cultural liaison meeting with Bo and top-tier entertainment assets. Here's what we know, the agent continued, his tone hardening. In 2009, shortly after Obama took office, our bureau submitted a wiretap request. The goal? To catch conversations between Mr. Combs and known drug traffickers who were washing money through bad boy-connected production houses. The request denied. The courtroom rustled. Denied by who? The prosecutor asked. The agent flipped to the last page in the folder, a call log from a White House-tied legal department. The name was hidden, but the timestamp matched the exact moment their request was shut down. The judge asked the jury to ignore any speculation, but the damage was already done. The implications weren't hidden. The timing wasn't random. A man under watch had somehow gotten close enough to the White House to block a wiretap. Cold. We're not saying President Obama personally shielded Mr. Combs, the agent clarified, but we are saying his administration built a channel, a connection, and that connection gave Mr. Combs cover for years. Reporters scribbled fast. Even the court stenographer paused before catching up. This wasn't about Diddy getting lucky. This was deliberate, strategic, powered by influence far deeper than anyone imagined, and that was just the beginning. The jury was leaning forward now, eyes wide, pens forgotten. Special Agent Redacted had blown open a part of the trial that nobody, not even the boldest journalists, had dared to imagine. But what unfolded next shifted the whole courtroom's mood from intrigue to dread. The agent raised a final photograph. It wasn't blurry. It wasn't hidden. It was a high-definition picture snapped at a private gathering in Martha's Vineyard. In it stood three men, Sean Diddy Combs, ex-President Barack Obama, and Reverend Al Sharpton. They weren't smiling for press. This wasn't a public function. It was a dimly lit meet-up on private land, an estate owned by a tech tycoon with ties to both Hollywood and defense contracting groups. This was taken in 2014. The agent said they called it a charity supper, but we got the guest list through court-sanctioned channels. What we uncovered were names linked to several sealed cases, past CIA operatives, arms traders under bans, and reps from Tristar Entertainment. Murmurs broke out again. The judge slammed the gavel. Order. The agent went on. Mr. Combs wasn't present as a visitor. He was a bridge, passing info from the streets of New York to the polished halls of political power, and in return his sins were wiped. A juror dropped their pen. Then came the detail that made even the judge's eyes narrow. In 2012, the agent said a trafficking sting was executed by the Miami branch. A known ally of Mr. Combs was busted in the act. Girls, narcotics, offshore wire movements. It was the kind of case that usually splashes headlines. The agent looked up, eyes burdened. 48 hours later, the file was locked. The agents were moved. The suspect walked free, and the whole case vanished. How, the prosecutor asked. The agent didn't flinch. A phone call came through from a Capitol Hill line. That's all we got. No identity, just one call, and the whole thing evaporated. He then handed over internal notes, emails from confused agents warning of meddling. One line stood out. The agent said. It read, "Don't ask why this got buried. Just be grateful you're not in that room." Then came maybe the darkest reveal. There was a span in 2015, the agent said, where we tracked Mr. Combs's moves closely. He went to Haiti, then Colombia, then private islands in the Caribbean. At first we figured it was for leisure, but info from foreign partners suggested otherwise. Meetings with cartel-backed investors, yacht parties involving minor girls flown in from Brazil and Eastern Europe. One source even said the girls were told they were going to an American Idol tryout. By then, the jury looked clearly rattled. The agent shut the folder. This whole time, he wore the face of a mogul, a philanthropist, a rebel. But behind the curtain, he ran an empire fueled by fear, blackmail, and protection, bought with reach. The judge called for a recess. People walked out of the room slowly, many in stunned silence. And for the first time since things began, Diddy looked like a man who realized the walls were finally closing. By the time court resumed, the crowd had gone quiet, sober. It wasn't just a music icon on trial anymore. It was the illusion of security, of fairness, of justice. Special Agent Redacted resumed his statement, his voice heavier now. What he exposed next made the courtroom freeze. "We have reason to think," he began, "that a stash of surveillance tapes from various Combs-owned spots existed going back to 2003. We know this not from guessing, but because some of those tapes briefly entered federal hands." He clicked a remote. A screen showed a screenshot, time-stamped footage from a monitoring room in one of Diddy's LA homes. This image was leaked by a whistleblower from a now-closed private security outfit hired by Combs. The room held over 30 screens, each showing a different place: bedrooms, hallways, pools, private studios. Many of the cameras, we learned, were concealed, and the people being filmed had no clue. Murmurs stirred from the audience. Now here's where it gets worse. The agent continued. In 2016, we got a warrant to seize 3 drives thought to have this footage, but when officers arrived at the listed address, a fire had broken out in the server area. Arson was proven. The timing, less than 20 minutes after our field office got the green light, suggests someone on the inside tipped them. He went on to describe the one remaining drive, luckily recovered from an associate's safe deposit box in Puerto Rico. That footage, he said, showed encounters between Mr. Combs and several celebrities, business figures and political names in extremely vulnerable states. Some looked intoxicated, others were clearly forced. "Was Barack Obama in those videos?" the prosecutor asked straight up. He was not, but the agent said several close associates, donors, and political allies of the administration were, and Mr. Combs was heard naming them casually. He knew their dirt. He kept the tapes as leverage. The courtroom went silent again. The agent then said something that would haunt the trial. In the end, he said, Diddy didn't just gather these recordings to stroke his ego. He used them as currency, as insurance in case anyone tried to cut him loose. That night, big networks broke the story. But privately, in secret rooms across DC and LA, crisis teams huddled to ask the only thing that mattered: how much did he really know? Court opened the next day under tight security. Federal marshals lined the walls. The vibe had shifted. Now it felt like the kind of dread that spreads when the infection reaches beyond the source. Special Agent Redacted came back to the stand, carrying a sealed envelope. He asked the judge to open it in private. Inside was a classified memo stamped with the header of an agency not often mentioned in trials, the Central Intelligence Agency. "For the record," the agent said, "this memo was declassified just for this case. It was first written in 2012 by a top analyst in the CIA's Domestic Ops Division. The subject line: entertainment assets, high-risk figures." The judge nodded and let him summarize. Starting in the mid-2000s, Mr. Combs was tagged as a high-value cultural influencer with potential for domestic sway. He was flagged by different departments for ties with known arms smugglers, offshore moneymen, and intelligence-adjacent contacts in Eastern Europe and West Africa. The agent paused for effect. The CIA didn't directly recruit Mr. Combs, he continued, but they benefited from his access to people of interest. His gatherings, his parties, and his fame offered a goldmine of behavioral data in return for plausible deniability. Combs was allowed to operate with little or no legal pressure. "Are you saying the CIA let him do this?" asked the prosecutor. "I'm saying," the agent replied, "that the agency saw his activities as useful. They may not have approved his crimes, but they definitely looked the other way." The next part hit even harder. The agent lifted a notarized ledger. "This document," he said, "shows a list of transfers made by shell companies tied to Combs, including several routed through TriStar Entertainment and other outfits linked to the Britney Spears conservatorship setup." The recipients? High-level political advisors, lobbyists, even someone linked to a Caribbean trafficking case that oddly vanished from DOJ files in 2015. The point was clear. Diddy wasn't some solo predator. He was a cog in a well-funded, tightly controlled network of power trading, blackmail and secret intel warfare. And just when it seemed like it couldn't get messier, Agent Redacted dropped one final shocker. "We believe," he said, "that one of Diddy's offshore accounts was used to buy classified data from a former NSA contractor. That contractor is now deceased." The room erupted. The judge shouted for order, but even Diddy's lawyers looked unsure of their footing now. Agent Redacted's testimony started with a quiet line. "Mr. Combs had the president's number." Gasps echoed. In 2014, after a music industry scandal involving underage girls and overseas guests, our team tried to detain Mr. Combs upon his return from St. Bartholomew. A red flag was issued. His private plane was set to be searched when it landed in Miami. The agent showed a Homeland Security document. "Here's the customs alert. It was active for 37 minutes, then suddenly cancelled." "Why?" the prosecutor asked. "Because someone from the Obama team called DHS. The call lasted 41 seconds. That's all we know." The number later traced to a secure White House counsel switchboard. The alert was pulled. The case dropped. Diddy walked free from the airport. Footage showed him grinning as he stepped into a black SUV. "We later learned," the agent continued, "that Diddy donated $500,000 to a PAC closely tied to Obama's re-election campaign within 48 hours of that call." The timing was damning. The courtroom held its breath, not a word, not even a cough. The agent inhaled. "I'm not here to accuse the ex-president. I'm here to prove Mr. Combs had reach no one else had, and he used it to hide crimes and quiet victims." A wave of realization swept the room. This wasn't just about Diddy now. This was about a machine, a pipeline of influence wrapped around America's top levels. And one question hung like smoke. Who else knew? When Agent Redacted returned for his 7th session, reporters had already labeled the case the Blacklist trial, because what he revealed next was a file so explosive it was handed to the judge in a fireproof case. Inside, a 94-page dossier called Project Courtroom. "This," he told the jury, "is Diddy's backup plan." The Courtroom file was first discovered during a 2022 raid on a storage site in Newark, NJ. Hidden in a climate-controlled vault beneath a fake business, agents found dozens of drives and hundreds of Polaroids. But what mattered most was a folder, tagged BL Priority Protected Archive. Inside, handwritten notes, flight lists, edited spy photos, and recorded talks, many caught with secret mics in nightclubs Diddy used between 2004 and 2019. Names on the list included executives from Interscope, Rock Nation, Live Nation, and even 2 past White House aides. Worst of all, black and white snapshots showing people in compromising positions, labeled with times, initials, and words like hush, leverage, and verify use. The aim of the archive, the agent explained, wasn't fun. It was leverage. He continued, whenever an artist resisted signing or a political favor was needed, Mr. Combs would hint that tapes existed. Most folded. He brought up a 2017 case where a rising singer refused to play a Diddy gig. Within days, rumors of her breakdown hit tabloids. Shortly after, she signed with a label in Diddy's pipeline. But one note froze the court. BO plus RS. All handled. Payoff confirmed, donation received. The initials were believed to reference Barack Obama and a known record exec. No direct tape of the president was found, but the meaning was clear. Donations, deals, and access were traded in a long-running, mutually useful system. "These aren't just claims," Agent Redacted finished. "These are methods, patterns. This wasn't about parties. It was about crafting a shadow empire, one night, one favor, one tape at a time." As the trial moved into its 8th day, a heavy mood filled the air. What followed wasn't numbers or logs. It was about lives. Agent Redacted returned, this time holding a manila folder marked Confidential Witness Files, declined. These were statements from people who had come forward, but wouldn't testify out of fear, NDAs or threats. There are at least 26, he said, who gave us testimony about their experiences with Mr. Combs but backed out. He read snippets. One from a former choreographer who worked in Diddy's circle from 2005-2012. She claimed she was drugged at an after-party and woke up bruised and confused. When she tried to report it, her agency dropped her. Another came from a 19-year-old male model flown to Miami for a supposed fashion gig. His affidavit described something more like eyes wide shut, cameras everywhere, no phones, and a handler, who told him not to speak unless spoken to. The most painful came from someone labeled CW11. They said they were 17 when introduced to Diddy by a camp insider. I thought it was mentorship, their note read. It was never that. He told me if I left or talked, my family would pay. The courtroom was still as the agent closed the file. These aren't headline names, he said. These aren't influencers, but they're real, and their fear let this go on way too long. He held up a list. Names were blacked out, but the dates and places matched known Diddy events. The judge asked, "What's that list?" "Confirmed victims," the agent said, "whose stories matched multiple details from our probe." By the time he stepped down, no one had dry eyes, not even the jury. On the final day of Agent Redacted's testimony, court security doubled, not because of threats, but because of what was about to be shown. "We saved the final proof for today," the agent said, unfolding a sealed transcript. "This is from a 2015 phone tap between Mr. Combs and an unnamed figure at a big lobbying firm in D.C. The transcript had been verified by multiple experts. He paused, then read. "You said keep it off the grid," Diddy's voice allegedly said, "but I did my part. I brought in money. I brought in names. We flipped 5 precincts blue last cycle. If I go down, some of you're going with me." The agent looked up. That voice was Mr. Combs, and what he was talking about wasn't just music. It was donations, mobilizing voters, and maybe election meddling through celebrity weight. The room blew up. A sitting president's election plan may have been entangled with one of the most controversial figures now on trial. Even if indirectly the fallout was nuclear. One juror whispered, "Jesus Christ." The agent wrapped up. "Diddy wasn't just buying silence, he was buying power, and the cost was your vote." He stepped down. The judge called a recess. And just like that, the celebrity scandal became something bigger, the darkest chapter in modern political history. A trial that may have finally pulled back the curtain on a rot that's been festering behind the scenes for decades. The question now, how? Many more names are buried in that blacklist file.